Morning all. Pad with a cup of tea this morning. Do you remember on the last video I said this?
For those of you old enough, it sounds like a bit of an old 90s skateboard at times.
Well, today I'm going to try and hopefully remove the issue. I've had the problem since about 2019 and I've had different brake setups, I've had different adjustable suspension setups, I've gone through the entire thing with a fine tooth comb, yet it still rattles. I did think it was the subframe rattling in the solid mounts. I've checked for that as well, so not entirely sure. So what I've bought recently is a set of MTech anti-rattle shims for the discs. So we'll get the wheel off and I'll show you a bit more. But the 4-pot calipers on this are the CAD K4 setup, and that's a 10.5-inch disc, steel disc itself on an alloy bell, so the disc actually moves a little bit. I did think originally it was the pads rattling around in the caliper. It is quite common. Now if you think to your current mini setup, if you've got 8.4-inch discs, you'll have a anti-rattle shim that sits over the back of the caliper, and that pushes the pads down. So the CAD calipers and say the mini spares and the mini sport calipers don't come with that. And they are a little bit loose in this, so I'm running the Mintex M1144 brake pads. I have put a bit of copper slip over them to try and dull it down, but it's still there. And I've put the shim over the top, and I got that from Summerford Mini Spares, and that's the same one for the ERA or Metro Turbo calipers, and it's still there. So what I've bought from MTech is a set of AP anti-rattle shims, and these go over the bolts and basically push the disc against it, but it allows that movement still that you need for a floating disc. So what we'll do is we'll get the wheel off, I'll show you around the suspension setup that I've got, we'll fit these and then go out and see if this actually fits. So in typical YouTube magic, I'm going to make the wheel come off. Well, I hope that worked. I'll pick it up in editing. Welcome to the wheel arch of my car. So this is the CAD K4 setup, large 4-pot caliper, 10.5-inch disc on an alloy bell, and then I added the CAD alloy flange on it. Things I've done already, as I said, I got the anti-rattle shim from Summerford Mini Spares, and that's on at the moment, and if you try and move the pads, there's no movement in them at all now, so I've hopefully alleviated any issue that potentially was there. So going around my suspension setup, I've got the CAD front tie arms adjustable. These things are much thicker than the standard ones. Polybush is standard, and they do give an incredible amount of adjustment, so good perch on that. The brake lines are hell. These have been custom made because I had a problem where they were originally just catching the tie arm, so I had them in black just to match everything underneath. From the top, these are Protec alloy shock absorbers. These are the first generation ones I got back in 2018 when I've built the car originally. I wasn't entirely sure on them, I was going to go for gas, but I was recommended these because they're UK built, and I've had them on the car ever since. They've been absolutely brilliant. I've got Mini Spares high-lows on the standard top arm. I may be going for Specialist Components top arms in the future, but at the moment they're doing just fine. I have shortened the bump stop a little because the hub itself is by CAD. It's the alloy one, so if I can get a good difficult to get a good angle here. If you can see, that's the alloy hub by CAD, so this gives a lot more movement and the angles are a lot better, so when the suspension is shorter you haven't got risk of the ball joints being destroyed. The CV joint, I've had it blasted and I painted it, and then the bottom arm is the Mini Spares one with poly bushes in the centre. Those are the offset ones, so it does make, when I'm moving the for the caster, it does make them it doesn't put them under too much stress. You'll probably see as well that the essentially the steering arm is a little different. So this is by Mondo Sport, and this is basically a large chunk of steel. They are for racing applications, but what I got it for was the anti-bump steer. So this is a rose joint in a boot, and it moves the pivot point further down. So this stops bump steer. And for those that don't know what bump steer is, as the wheel goes up, depending on the geometry, you could potentially move the steering in or out, so essentially the toe, depending if you're a linear bounce. But if you're going around a corner and it bumps, you could potentially move the the steering a little, it makes it a bit unpredictable. So having this has helped massively. So what I've got these for is on the towers themselves. So if you move, you can hear a little bit of rattling, and that is the gap for the heat expansion of the disc. So as the disc expands due to racing, that noise starts to go away. But whilst it's cold, you get the movement. So these springs go over here and basically pull the disc towards the hub, and it still allows that movement as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'll remove these one at a time, add the springs in, and tighten them up. And CAD have very thankfully sent me the torque settings for these, so I'll remove them, add them, and torque them back up. So here we go. Okay, so that took a little longer than I thought it would do. So these are all tightened up now to 11 foot-pound torque, so you can see the springs. So what essentially they're doing now is they are pulling the disc back towards the bell, but because they're springs, they're allowing the disc to be pushed away as well. So they're on all 8, and now, unless you hit it, but whereas before there was a lot more. Happy with that. Now one side, rinse, repeat, other side.
Well, that's all 16 of them done. Didn't take too long, bit monotonous trying to do them all, and trying to keep the springs straight as you tighten them, that was a bit of a pain in the backside. So out on the bumpiest roads I could find, and you know what, the rattle's gone. So after 6 years of that torture going through my ears, it's finally gone. Could not be happier. But remember, this is a road car, it isn't a race car. So when you've got rattles here, there and everywhere, and especially those cars that are living up at about 6,000 to 8,000 RPM, and they're on and off the brakes, they're getting them ridiculously hot. It probably works for them, but not for this call sign. I like my little pleasures, and especially on the old ears as well as I'm getting older. So really happy with it. So enjoying the time and the boost. I've got a few shows coming up. I've got one this weekend at Cobra Car Seats, Cars and Coffee. I'll make sure I get some film around that as well, because there's some beautiful cars in the area, and I'll make sure I get some to and from footage as well. I appreciate you sticking around for this short video this week, but again, as I said, I really appreciate it. Now I'm back in the fold with this. So until the next one, guys, thanks very much, and I'll see you soon.